Oh dear, the Antichrist has hit puberty and all bets are off. Damien now lives with his uncle, and anyone he gets close to uncovering the truth gets final destinationed. This is Damien, Omen II, and yes, there will be complaints about that title. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me is Tim.
Hello, Hail Satan.
This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a film. It's that simple. And throughout October, we are working through the entire franchise of The Omen. And today is time for Damien, Omen II.
Ugh, that title pains me.
Interestingly, IMDb says Omen II Damien, which makes me think that the UK title's the right way around. But yes, the original title is Damien Omen II, just to be annoying for the alphabetical sorting of movies. But hey,
I mean, luckily I have the box set, so it's just a big box that says the Omen collection, yes. So I don't have to worry about having it on the shelf like that, but it would drive me up the wall.
I'm pretty sure that box set doesn't include the first Omen, and when you get that, potentially...
That's true, huh?
That's going to go in the F section.
Alright, well... I guess we'll see when we watch the first Omen if it's good enough and I have to buy it.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just point it out because that is the... At least I understand that title more. It's a sentence, but...
Yeah.
Anywho. Yes, we're going to talk about The Omen 2. We'll give you a warning before we get to spoilers, but we will start spoiler free. And if you are enjoying the show, please do hit the like button on YouTube. It helps out a bunch if you do. And you can also get bonus content from me and Tim over in Patreon or via YouTube membership, but I'll tell you more about that at the end. So, yeah, obviously The Omen is a classic. We talked about it in depth when we did about a week or so ago. Damien is now like 12 years old, right? He's about to turn 13. He's living with his uncle and auntie, right? So Gregory Peck's brother, who we never met in the first movie, but he's kind of the acting father now. And yeah, it's kind of about all the various people in or around his life that are kind of ushering him towards his destiny as the Antichrist. There's more deaths, there's more things going on. We'll get into all that, a bit more detail and spoilers. But this kind of... He's also got a cousin who's effectively his brother in this now that he's living with this side of the family. So yeah, lots to talk about, lots to get into. But that's the basic gist of it. So Tim...
Yes.
How do you feel about The Omen 2?
I feel pretty indifferent about it. It's, to me, it's not like the worst thing in the world, but I don't know, it's just kind of a bland sequel. Especially like, I think we mentioned before when we're talking about the not the first Omen, but the first Omen movie.
Tim, just use the word original. The original Omen.
The original. Right? Yeah, I think it kind of, when we were talking about that, like, it's not a movie I watch all the time, but whenever I do watch, I'm always surprised, like, damn, this is good. Like, this is a damn fine movie. And then, yeah, there's just, I don't know, there's nothing, like, horrible about this, but it just feels like a big drop in quality. No offense, like, you know, the director or the actors or whatever. I was with it for a little bit. Like, I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested to see where it's going. I do think it is an interesting franchise, because I was thinking about like other, you know, like maybe movies around the similar time or whatever, like, you know, 70s horror stuff like The Exorcist, or, you know, I guess not really a horror movie, but like Jaws, you know, and those are movies where I feel like, yeah, you didn't really need to do a sequel, and then, you know, the sequels come, and again, I think they're not, in terms of The Exorcist, it is kind of a batshit sequel, but it's not very good. And then Jaws, I feel like is kind of forgettable. I do feel like The Omen, though, it didn't need a sequel, but there is like a continuation of that story, you know, like, you know, you there's a character that's like, all right, there's a story to be told with Damien growing up. But yeah, just I don't know. I just feel like there isn't anything super interesting about it. A couple of interesting kills. I thought, it slowed down a bit as the movie went on, but again, I don't know. I just feel sorry if it's makes for maybe a boring discussion, but I don't know, I just feel very ambivalent about it. It's just like, all right, not the worst thing in the world, but didn't really overly impress me or win me over or anything.
Way to hype up the audience, Tim. Sorry if this makes for a dull discussion. Breathe some life into it, man. Anyway,
I mean, it's hard to, get excited about a middle of the road movie.
Well, so it's not a great movie by any means, nor is it even a good movie. It is probably pretty mediocre overall. I will say this though, it does have like 2 or 3 pretty good deaths. Well, there's actually 2 or 3 really fun sequences that stick out. I remembered them quite well from the first time I watched it. Watching it this time, a lot of the rest of the movie, like I'd forgotten about completely almost. It just sort of withered away. But it does have some good death scenes. I think the biggest problem,
I'd say there's like 2 pretty standout ones. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting a good third one, but there's definitely 2 that stood out for me.
There's 2 great ones, and then one that's funny, if not as like. Yeah, I would say this. I would argue for 3, but I mean that's
okay.
a debate to have later.
I might be just forgetting it. Yeah.
But if I was to sort of criticize the main problems with this movie, I think the first thing I would say is that the structure is a little bit all over the place, and part of that extends from another problem, which is who is the main character of The Omen 2. And there's like 3 choices that you could kind of make an argument for. There's Damien himself, but there is pockets of the movie where he kind of like isn't on screen and we're dealing with other stuff. There's the uncle character who's basically just swapped in where Gregory Peck was in the last one, but again he sometimes like doesn't feel like he's the one that's focusing on. And then the third character, who's Paul, who works at the company and is kind of like trying to do some evil stuff at the Thorn company, he feels like he's the focus at certain points as well, where there's big stretches where it's more about him at the business than it is about anything else. And I think what this does is that it makes every element of it feel like they aren't the complete focus of the movie. So just when you think steam's getting going on one of them, it'll shift. Like an example of this that I would say that I really felt in the movie is that early on it shows you that Damien and his cousin Mark, how I say was the other kid.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark. They go to like a military school, like a military academy, and they make a whole big deal, and they introduce Lance Henriksen as their their sergeant who's going to be in charge of them. Like seeing Lance Henriksen, but
Of course, yeah.
I thought this school was going to be like maybe not this time because I'd seen it before, but the first time I watched this, I thought this school was going to be the main place the movie was set. That we were going to follow these 2 interacting with other kids, and they even introduced like a bully character kind of early on, and I thought this is going to be like the main backbone of the movie. Yeah, we'll occasionally cut to like the uncle and the business and stuff, but this is going to be the main thing in the movie. This is the main focus. And Lance Henriksen's introduced like he's going to be a very, very important character. And he's in a handful of scenes after that. The school stuff ends up feeling like an afterthought by the time we get towards the end of the movie. It feels like, oh no, it became much more about like whatever this agriculture stuff is at the business that gets a lot of runtime, So that bouncing around,
that stuff, that stuff really grinded the movie to a halt for me. Like, I wouldn't say maybe I love what's going on with the other stuff, but I at least found that a bit more interesting. Like all the business stuff I could have done without.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of it.
Sure, yeah.
This idea that there's someone in the company that's pushing for these more and more unethical things because they're evil and they're kind of and that's not really even a spoiler to say. Like, there's several characters in this who are clearly like the nanny from the first movie, who are clearly here to support and like usher Damien to his like his
unholiness,
his birthright, I think is what I was trying to say. But
yeah,
so I think it feels very uneven, and it feels like one should have been the more clear focus over the others. But I think the bigger problem that comes from that, though, is that none of these like characters that could be the main character feel like they have like a good change or arc throughout the film. And it's annoying because they kind of hint at one with Damien, because early on I was thinking, oh, does he know what he is? Is he evil already? And then the movie kind of makes it seem like, oh, he doesn't, but I was like, okay, so he's going to have like an arc, and like, and there is like a big reaction at one point when he realizes some stuff, but at the same time though, it feels like he just turns like a light switch to just being, oh, I'm just the Antichrist now. There's no there's no like, you know, being pushed to the edge. There's no like characters do something to him that makes him turn worse or like go down like the evil rabbit hole where, oh, he could have maybe been convinced to not be evil, but someone betrayed him and it turned him or something. Like, there's nothing like that. He's just immediately just evil after a certain point, even though he seemed quite distressed at the idea like 2 scenes before.
Yeah, that was a big problem with me. I just didn't find that like an interesting character really, because you're just doing like, you know, typical evil kid kind of stuff, you know. Like I think it would have been a much more interesting choice to see him struggling, or, you know, maybe him not even believing that, you know, that's real. Like that to me is a much more interesting movie or character choice, where it's like someone that is, you know, scared and freaked out when like all these weirdo adults keep coming up to you and being like, oh, like you're the unholy one, you know, or whatever. Like to me that'd be much more interesting than just having like, oh yeah, I've seen evil kids before. It's not that big a thing.
But that's the problem though, is he's not even that evil to begin with. He's just kind of a little shit. But then the change just isn't satisfying at all. And part of it is that we just don't spend enough time with them to really get a proper arc. Now, admittedly, I don't think the kid's a great actor either. So there's definitely a few moments that stick out as being kind of rough, especially when he's trying to act kind of evil.
I think the way my wife put it is like she walked in during, I forget what specific scene, but it was something between Damien and Mark, and she was like, why are these kids talking like they're like over dramatic 40-year-old women? Like their line deliveries were just very like, oh, I can't believe. Like
no, that's a fair point. There is an interesting potential arc to be told of an adolescent who is maybe trying to be a good person because he thinks that's just what he is and that's normal, but is like pushed into something. Maybe you could actually even say something with that, of this idea of like what you're destined to be because of what like people have decided you're going to be and like your role in society or something. You could actually have it be an allegory for something or do something with it, but I don't think the movie does say a goddamn thing. It doesn't know how to handle that arc at all. In fact, it barely even attempts to do it. It just kind of switches at some point in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to see a movie about a boy from hell rejecting his destiny, maybe check out.
Don't say it. Don't you say it, you son of a bitch.
They know what I'm talking about.
No. You've put me in a corner here, Tim. I don't know where to go. Anyway,
you told me not to say it, so okay.
Yeah, but I didn't expect you to listen to me. I thought you were going to defy me.
No, I'm a good boy.
Shut up. I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, you son of a bitch. I guess
it's the October-thon, by the way. I don't know if you mentioned that. It's October, watching lots of horror movies.
Is this the time we bring that up, or are we already talking about the movie, Tim?
Just in case people weren't aware.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh.
Pumpkins, candy, kids saying boo.
Thank you for defining Halloween for the audience, just in case they weren't aware. So when I looked at this in IMDb, it listed 2 directors, but I only saw 1 director in the credits. Now, upon looking at Wikipedia, it's just that there was another director, but left early in production. So it does seem like the Don Taylor, who's credited, is the guy who did most of it. I don't know if it was like a pure troubled shoot or if it was just a very early swap. I have no idea, but this director did some other movies I've seen, namely The Final Countdown and the Third Planet of the Apes movie. So,
okay.
Yeah, but he's also been an actor though. He was in Stalag 17, which I think the uncle actor, William Holden, I'm pretty sure he was in that as well.
What was it?
Yeah, he was. Stalag 17.
I don't think I've heard of that. A sci-fi movie, I'm assuming?
No, it's a war movie, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to say it's a Billy Wilder directed film. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I actually own that one. I just haven't watched it yet.
Let us know how it is.
Oh yeah, I'll let you know how the 1950s war movie is. I don't really have much to say about the director other than Final Countdown's an underwhelming movie, and Escape from Planet of the Apes. People kind of like that one because it's got a fun premise, because it's the apes in like present day world, but it's hardly like high art either. So
yeah, it's fine, I guess.
He's a middling director, I would say.
The third Planet of the Apes movie, it does make me laugh that they managed to find a way to make another movie after the whole planet blows up.
Spoilers, Tim. Come on.
It's all right.
Don't be ruining Beneath the Planet of the Apes for people now.
They knew what they were getting into when they press play on this episode.
They did. They were expecting spoilers for the second Planet of the Apes movie on a review of the second Omen movie. All right. Is there anything else I would like to add here before we get to spoilers? Probably not. I mean, they use a little bit of the same music. I mean, maybe not the exact same like recordings, but they have some of the same chanting and stuff kind of over some new music. Other than that, I will say there's definitely less atmosphere in this film.
Yeah.
It feels a bit more like everything's just shot a bit more plainly, a lot more kind of like, obviously there's a lot of scenes in daytime and stuff in the first movie, but it still managed to make quite a lot of it very moody, despite that fact. Whether it be the death that had the storm building up to it, or just kind of how like sort of intimate it felt at times when it was Gregory Peck traveling around the world. Because to go back to my earlier complaint about it being difficult to define which character in this is the main character, the first movie had that. Like, Gregory Peck's character was absolutely the main character. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Whereas here, like, you can have an ensemble for sure, but I guess the other problem along with this, the what we've already said, is that the different elements of the movie don't really feel like they gel that well together. The stuff at the business feels pretty separate from the military academy stuff. I mean, the uncle doesn't even like really get told like what's going on really in terms of like who Damien might be until like 25 minutes before the end of the movie. So there's a lot of like family stuff and stuff's just going on. It definitely plays out a lot more like a slasher movie sequel, just only in the sense that we have deaths kind of like at a consistent pace throughout the movie, but all the stuff with the main characters is mostly just kind of like plodding along, because it is like we can't change how they're all acting until we get into the third act. So up until that point, while there's deaths happening, it has to be mostly disconnected from the main character so they don't think anything's wrong. Like, you can't have the characters go, my god, like 4 people around us have died in the past week, like we should be greatly concerned by that. Like, we can't have them noticing that too much too early. So we have to, just have them, having birthday parties and doing fun activities together and whatnot. Right, spoilers for Omen 2. You have been warned, everyone. All right, Tim. I hope you got some hot takes for me. I'm braced.
The movie, I don't know, it's not that great. Is that a hot take?
Did you even cook it? Is the heat even turned on? There's just a cold frying pan sitting there with the sad face in itself because it's not even feeling the heat.
Well, I mean, give me some time. You kind of blindsided me. I don't think we've ever, in the 600 episodes we've done, we never start spoilers by saying, okay, what are your hot takes?
Yeah, but I just talked for like 5 minutes. I want you to say something so I can rest my voice before I start, saying what the start of the movie was. How did the movie start, Tim? Why don't you tell us that? You tell the audience, the dear people at home are in their cars, their bathtubs, maybe they're at an orgy and they just want to listen to something whilst they're doing all the dirty business. How does the movie start?
It's... what are they, like archaeologists or something? They're going crazy because they saw this wall that they think Damien is on.
See, this is why I don't ask Tim to do it. This is why I don't usually get Tim to try and say what happened, because he does that whatever that was.
Well, I don't. We don't need to go minute by minute. Like,
well, no, but like, I think the detail that you're leaving out here is that the archaeologist is the archaeologist from the first movie who gave Gregory Peck the daggers and was like, "Hey, your son's the devil.
Right, yeah.
You have to go kill him."
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a take, but I will say something that I didn't notice about the movie is like these people keep coming up to I forget what's the guy in this, is it Richard, the like
the uncle
or whatever?
Yeah, the uncle.
Yeah,
Richard. Yeah.
It's hard. Like, I want to say dad character because he's basically like, you know, the dad in this, but he's the, you know, not Damien's actual dad, but whatever. I guess Gregory Peck wasn't his real dad in the first movie either. So, but regardless, like, I feel like these people that want to warn him about Damien being the Antichrist, they're always like these crazy bearded people that are rushing up to him being like, your son's the devil, you gotta kill him with these knives. It's like, yeah, no one's gonna listen to you if you approach it like this. Like, people need to like take a step back and realize like, okay, this is pretty crazy. Like, let's think of what the best way to sit down and talk to these people are. Like, I don't know,
I agree with the sentiment that no one approaches the topic with the sensitive touch that it perhaps should have to try and maybe even make him want to listen to you for 2 minutes. I feel very weirded out though by the fact that you specified some crazy bearded person, because I don't think anyone who talks to him in this movie about Damien being the Antichrist is bearded.
Wasn't the I mean, the guy we were just talking about, the archaeologist guy, didn't he have a beard?
Yeah,
I imagine.
Yeah, but he never goes to see him. He's dead before the rest of the movie.
Oh yeah, he gets killed by the sand or whatever. This felt more like an Indiana Jones opening than it did.
Yeah. We'll go back and talk about what happens to these two at the start. But like all the people who come up to him, it's like a lady reporter. It's the guy who works for the museum, who is pretty clean shaven for the most part.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, there's no beards.
Okay. Well, I'm conflating the archaeologists in the beginning, but they're always like have crazy beard energy.
I can accept that. Yeah, I can accept half crazy beard energy. Like, because I agree with the sentiment. I just thought it was weird that you specified beards, but I'm like, I don't think any of them have beards. Also, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we need more concrete evidence than just like, this kid, the face on this wall looks like this kid now. Like, it's, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like if you know, people had lots of paintings back in the day. I'm sure you could find a painting that looked like me at some point in history. But like, you know, you couldn't be like he's the devil. I mean, fair. So, I think the things to get across here is that this painting's new. This painting wasn't in the first movie, but the archaeologist who warned Gregory Peck is talking to his friend, who I think's a journalist or something. This guy says, "Hey, I need you to go to the uncle who's now looking after him." Which, by the way, didn't the end of the first movie imply the president was taking Damien in?
Yeah. I thought that was like,
we're just ignoring that, are we? We're just not going to bring that up.
Like, I thought that was the whole point. Like, the reason why they chose this family was because they knew they were close to the president and that this would be, you know, him taking a step to that power.
Nope. Forget that.
I guess like the Thorne family or whatever seems like they're, you know, have like a legacy. They're rich assholes. I mean, or whatever.
It was clear in the first movie that Gregory Peck's character was rich, but I'm betting the screenwriters of this movie were so thankful. They were like on their knees saying thank you, God, for the fact that in the first Omen they never specify what his family's business is, because it let them just do what they wanted in this one. Because like we didn't know from the first movie that like Thorne's family was like, oh, they own a company that does all this like agriculture stuff and electronics and energy and whatever. Like, they had carte blanche to come in and do whatever they wanted here. and they're probably very thankful for that. Because if he had a line in the first movie where he's like, yeah, well, the rest of the family is dealing with the the ping pong ball business, like it would have put the writers of this one in a bit of a corner when it came to try and make their job seem important.
Just so many ping pong ball deaths in the movie.
Anyway, so yeah, the opening of the movie is like, hey, come, look, I can prove it, right? Because I do appreciate the reason why the archaeologist is way more freaked out is because he already thought this kid was the Antichrist, based on the conversation in the first movie, based on, hey, has he got the 666 on him? He was born this time and date. He knew about the priests and the jackal, like, birth or whatever, all that stuff. But he's finally like really scared because a photograph of Damien's in the newspaper because of the death of Gregory Peck's character, and he rushes this guy, his friend, to the dig site to say, hey, I've got proof that this kid's the Antichrist, because the guy's obviously not believing him. And the proof is a painting on the wall of someone who looks like Damien, surrounded by snakes, like he's some sort of serpent-esque kind of villainous character. And it's like, okay, sure, right? I get that if you've already got all the other evidence, right? This final thing to clinch it is like, here's a photograph of the little shit from like thousands of years ago. So, okay, he was already on board, Tim. So, the painting's like the final, line in the sand.
I mean, this sounds like an allegory for every like conspiracy theorist today. Like, no, see, the proof is right here. Look, there's a picture of him shaking hands with this guy. Like, okay, yeah.
Suspension of disbelief, my old boy. So here's the thing: as soon as they walk into this like cave area that's been dug out, and they look at this painting, like like there's like a raven watching them. The wind kind of makes the candle flutter.
The raven,
right? And we start getting the build up to the powers that be, Satan, the evil itself, doesn't want them to like reveal this information. So it causes a cave in where the rocks come down on both sides. It traps them in this little hallway in the cave. In this, well, I say cave, it's more of a it's an old underground building that's been buried for thousands of years. And then sand starts pouring in, so they're buried alive with sand in this like tomb type area. And like 7 years later, we skip ahead to like the rest of the story. Now Damien's like 12, blah, 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 blah. We go from there. I think one of the things I want to bring up at this movie, and I realize it's a bit of a shaky premise here to complain about, because you still have to accept a part of it, even for the first movie. But I feel like in this one, characters who like find out something about Damien are like almost immediately killed by a supernatural force. And yet, there's certain characters who, because they have to survive for more of the plot, don't immediately get killed. So why does one character who, for example, later on, the doctor who just looks at his blood and goes, this is jackal DNA, that's strange, right? He's immediately killed. But then other characters, like the museum guy, like he's not killed until after he shows the painting, or the mural painting to the uncle. He's killed during that, so the information still gets passed on. It just kind of feels like, I don't know, like if they were all a little bit later, where it's like, okay, the evil force, like they're becoming too much of a problem, the evil force finally steps in, maybe the opportunity has to present itself. But in this one, it feels like at any point, like it can just kill them instantly. So why does it wait so long for some of them but not the others? That is it.
Yeah.
I hesitate to call it a plot hole, but it is an inconsistency that did spring to mind, as I was like, there was definitely a couple of moments where I went, well, why don't you just kill this guy now before he tells the uncle about the mural painting? But yeah, no, the movie has to do that so that the uncle can eventually see it.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's a good point. And I don't know, it does feel like, and maybe this is unfair comparing it to, the first one, which had just like, an all-star director and everything, but I just didn't feel like as much tension when we get to those scenes.
Sure.
Whereas, the first one, I don't know, just, and again, Donner is a great director, so he can handle this stuff very well, but like it feels like there's so much suspense and build up during those scenes, and here a lot of the time is just like, oh, okay, we're doing like the kill scene now, or like whenever they would show an animal in the first one, like they cut to like a dog or or like, I mean, I guess maybe it's like a little different like when they're at the zoo and they're showing like all the crazy baboons and stuff, but like I don't know, it always felt so menacing, where like here it was, I don't know, like the Raven, even though there's like a cool scene with it, like I don't know, I just didn't get as much like,
Sure.
you know, an ambience or menace out of it.
No, I mean, like we were saying earlier, the atmosphere is just kind of lacking, and you're right. Like, I think some of the death scenes are really fun because of like the crazy thing that happens to the person and the practical effects, and sometimes not even because they're good. There's one death that I like because it's really, really bad looking, but I love it. I love how bad it looks.
Yeah,
you know. So that's why I said it's more like a slasher movie sequel in the sense that it feels like we're just here for the deaths and. It doesn't have like, it doesn't have the suspense that Halloween does, but you can still have some fun deaths in a Halloween, I don't know, 5 or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Take your pick. But there are some memorable deaths. I mean, we can go to the deaths first if you want, if that's like the exciting part to break down before we go back and talk about what the overall character journey is.
I guess if we want to start there,
because they kind of come in pockets. Because the first big one really after the opening, which is the two guys drowning in the sand, is I think the first one is the reporter lady who shows up.
I mean, I guess this isn't really like, I don't think we really see the actual death, but is the aunt killed before her?
Oh yeah, there's like a great aunt who, yeah, well, yeah, I mean she's technically, I guess she is. She's basically given a heart attack, but I mean honestly, the only interesting to talk about with her is that she's convinced that Damien's a bad influence, and this is actually one of the other story things that bugged me, is that she is adamant. She's like telling the uncle and his wife, like, hey, I'm older than you, I've left my like 27% share of the company in my will to you, but I will write you out of my will if you don't separate Damien and Mark, because Damien's a horrible influence. And like Eric gets really upset and says, oh, why do you hate Damien so much? Why do you hate Damien so much? He's like, nah, trust me, he's a bad influence. See if they ever actually showed you Damien being a bad influence, it would maybe make some sense. But like, why is she so adamant against Damien? We never see anything that would say, oh, that's why she's against him or anything. She just is. It's like she just somehow knows that he's bad.
Yeah, no, I was gonna bring up the same thing. Like, it's very strange that she is so against him, and there's like, I don't know, like, does she think that he's like the son of the devil, or does she just think he is normally bad? But I mean, even when we do have scenes like with Damien and Mark and stuff, like, he never seems that bad. Like,
no,
maybe he's like a little like flippant or maybe a little sassy, but like, it doesn't seem like a evil influence or something.
No, he doesn't. It doesn't jive with what she said about him. Right, like, it's particularly with how like intense she is in her belief.
The way she's acting, it's like she knows that he's the Antichrist.
Yeah,
but it's like, why would you think that?
Or if it was in the real world, I'd say the way she's acting, I would think, oh, he's taking Mark to crack dens or something.
Right,
like, it would be something that severe, or he's putting him in danger or something. But like, I don't even know, because there's like a little moment where she talks to Mark and she talks to Damien briefly as well, and she's like, hey Mark, you shouldn't let Damien lead you around like he does. And he's like, he doesn't do that, we're friends. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what it seems like for most of the movie, honestly. It doesn't seem like he's like wielding power over him or like dominating him or anything like that. It just feels, I don't know, they just feel like a couple of 12-year-olds.
I think, yeah, I think it goes back to your initial problem where we're just really not seeing enough of the characters. Like, maybe if the movie was focused on them and we got more a sense of their relationship or whatever, that would work out better. But yeah, it never really seems to amount to anything that she's saying.
No, so she just dies of a heart attack, which to get to her death, there's really nothing to say about it. The Raven shows up, looks at her a bit, and then she dies.
It is a scary Raven, I guess.
but so the reporter lady shows up, and it's this woman who's in like a red outfit, and we hear about her earlier on because she wants to interview the uncle character, and
then was she the sister of the photographer from the first movie?
I think she said friend. I don't think she said sister.
Oh, okay.
Right, but she mentions that a little bit later. She says, my like friend like was a photographer, and he worked with your brother. When she's talking to the uncle, she's like, hey, Richard Thorne, your brother. What was his? Was it Rupert Thorne? What's his name in the first one? I can't remember.
Isn't that a Batman character?
I think it is a Batman character. It is. That's what I'm thinking of. So yeah, like my brother or your brother, tried to kill your nephew with these daggers, and my friend, who's a photographer, was there. And this lady is British, so it's like, okay, you're a journalist in England. You know this guy because he's a photographer. Makes sense. Blah blah blah. And it's like, okay. So you've been looking into this for 7 years because you've been trying to figure out why he's dead and looking into everything. And you've been looking at the dig and seeing what this guy's been digging up and all that. And she has the news that, they've found the body of this archaeologist that's been lost for 7 years and yada, yada, yada. And basically when she starts talking about, the larger than life stuff, right? And she starts implying things, he just gets mad and tells her to go away and throws her out the car, basically. I mean, not physically, but like, stops the car and kicks her out. And then she runs into the aunt, right? Richard's wife, and is making pleasant enough conversation until the guy who works at the museum, who's another recurring character in this, I'll just call him the museum guy for lack of a better name, he like hears from Richard, the uncle, this encounter happened where he had to like get rid of her, and he's like, hey, don't say another word to her. She's apparently been accosting your husband and get up and like harassing him, and so it's like, okay. And these two scenes are pretty much back to back. And then almost the very next scene is the scene that leads up to her death scene, where she goes to the school, right, the military school, and the kids are playing, I think, field hockey out on the field. And obviously it's called field hockey, you know what I mean? Like, I was looking for the word, the pitch, whatever you want to call it. And she's like, hey, or one of those kids, Damien Thorne, like the coach or whoever, is like, yeah, he's that one over there, blah, blah, blah. And I don't hate this moment. I think this moment's fine because the idea, of course, is that she's seen the mural, the painting, and when she sees Damien in real life, it's like, oh shit, it's him. Like she knows it's him. Like she can see it with her eyes, and she feels it in her gut, and she gets scared, and she runs away. Damien kind of stares over for a little bit, and then her death scene's immediately following that, where she's driving down the road, and it's like a countryside road, so it's very quiet, big open fields on either side. Her car breaks down, she gets out, and then the Raven shows up and attacks her. So we get this like comical scene where she's like, the Raven's like, in her hair and it's pecking at her, and she ends up with like blood. I think it's implied that her eyes have been pecked out.
Yeah.
You don't really see it, but you see like blood coming down from there, and she clearly can't see when she's getting up and moving around.
Yeah, like it looks like, I don't know, they're supposed to be almost like black holes or something.
I don't know if she ever owned her eyelid. Maybe she did and I just missed it. But like she's sort of stumbling around. But she sort of like fights with this thing. And because it's broad daylight and I don't think the direction's particularly great, it does sort of like make it look a bit goofy at times. Like when she's sort of wrestling with the crow, it does feel like an actor's just kind of like pretending. But entertaining for what it's worth. And then
it's dumb, but it's fun as hell.
Yeah. And then the piece de resistance of this scene is that she stumbles back onto the road. And this truck is this huge, big semi-truck with a big sort of, cargo kind of thing at its back, is driving down the road. And despite the fact that it's broad daylight, he doesn't, like, see her, like, early enough to, like, stop, even though she's, like, kind of stumbling onto the road slowly. You'd think he'd be able to swerve or slow down in time, but whatever. Yeah. Let's just say he's distracted. He doesn't see her. Fine. He hits her, right? She gets hit by the truck, and the thing that makes this glorious is that obviously it cuts away, you don't see quite the impact.
Wait, but I'm sorry, before you continue, I just want to say I have no idea how they did this scene.
You have no idea.
No, it looked so good.
Doesn't it? Because the next shot you see after the impact, and I don't know how in the laws of physics and aerodynamics this works, but somehow the body of the woman flies up past the top of the front of the truck and hits the cargo container in the back. How getting hit from the front of the truck sends her flying over the top of it, I do not know, but it does. So you get this insane shot of the dummy like going up and hitting
it was a dummy.
It was a dummy. Well, if it wasn't obvious in that shot, the shot where it lands on the ground and the back of the truck drives over her is very, very clearly a dummy, Tim. Come on now.
I don't know. I had to pause it for a second because I was like, did they just kill someone on camera? Like, it looks so real.
It does not. Tim is being facetious. Don't listen to him, everyone. But the trajectory of this body is insane. So she gets hit, big, huge semi-truck, hits her. She flies up and over the top of the truck front, hits the edge of the cargo, and then falls down the side so that she can then be run over by the back wheels.
Yeah.
It is absurdly over the top. It's very entertaining, and yeah, 10 out of 10. I can't fault it. It's amazing.
Yeah. And then just when you think it can't get any better, they cut to the truck, and who is driving but the Raven?
I don't know what to say to that joke, Tim.
He had to finish the job. He was like, all right, bitch.
At least I think it could be a crow, because the crows and ravens look pretty similar.
I mean, maybe this is too much of a conspiracy take, but I think they're the same bird.
Whoa, okay. Tim's getting cancelled. Putting ravens and crows in the same boat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's a standout death. There's some other middling ones in the middle of the movie, no pun intended. There's a guy at the company who's like opposing all the evil stuff, so he conveniently falls through the ice at one point, and there's not really much to say about that one. It's just okay. It's fine.
Am I crazy, or did it feel like that scene went on forever? Like I feel like there's so many times they kept running back to the hole in the ice. Like I don't know, maybe.
Well, I think
it just seemed long to me, but
he drifts. He falls in a hole in the ice, and then he actually goes under the ice, and he ends up at a different hole. So they run to a second hole.
I don't know. It just felt like it was going on like so long for me. But yeah, that one didn't really do much. It was just like, okay, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, supernatural ice breaks, kills this dude. It's fine.
Well, I mean, then they cut to the Raven who is pecking little holes into the ice.
Tim's trying to make it sound like the Raven does all the killings. I'd say most of them are more Final Destination-esque, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Raven did peck out the eyes of the women. That is fair. So you've got that, and then the other big one that I really sticks out to me is the Doctor, which comes a good bit later in the movie. Where
this is the elevator one, right?
Yeah. So because Damien and all the boys were at like the plant, they were getting like a tour of like where the uncle works, and where all the chemicals and stuff were being done. And because there was an accident, which was actually a death scene in and of itself, actually, now I'm thinking about it, there was like another good person at the company had to be taken out by evil forces. So he basically just gets sprayed with like the what do you call it,
some type of gas or something.
Not the pesticides. What do you to grow crops?
Fertilizer.
Thank you. The fertilizer. Yes. It was something to do with fertilizer or pesticides or whatever. But he gets sprayed with all this stuff. It's kind of toxic. And again, it sounds like it's more fun than it actually is. He's kind of climbing a ladder as he's sort of like slowly getting sick and dying. But it's not as visually as interesting as some of these other ones. But because of this, the kids all get checked out at the hospital to see if they're okay. They're fine, minor things that'll last for a week or whatever, but they're all okay. But curiously, Damien is not affected. It's like he's immune to whatever this was. So the doctor wants to keep him overnight. Damien makes a fuss, and he says, okay, you can go home, but come back next week, whatever. That night, the doctor is in the lab, and he's looking at Damien's blood that he's taken. And it looks weird to him. So he pulls out a book and double checks it with the book, and he's like, wait a minute, this looks like cells of a jackal.
I know I've seen that blood somewhere before. My ex-wife.
So he calls someone, right, to talk about some other doctor or scientist, and he's basically like, so he's just like made this discovery. He's literally just like, up until this moment, he was not even a threat to the existence of Damien. But the second that he has made this discovery that could like link back to Damien's origin, he goes to this elevator, he starts going up, and then the elevator starts like just getting a mind of its own. Like we're full on like supernatural forces here, where the elevator just drops from like up high all the way down below, and which doesn't kill him, right? It just kind of like scares the shit out of him. It's a fun sequence though, up until that point anyway, because it's, you know, it's kind of a cool elevator because it's all glass. It's kind of a red light, so it's got kind of a, you know, as far as visuals go, this is one of the more visually interesting scenes of the movie.
Yeah.
But the best part of it though is that at the end of this, when he's dropped, and because it's dropped suddenly for quite a distance, he's sort of landed on the floor, right? So he's lying down, like with his head just sort of pressed against the wall of the elevator. The elevator cable up at the top comes down at like, you know, breakneck speed, right? And it's this line that's just going, because it's like came loose and it's coming down very fast, it's just going across the middle of the elevator. So what you basically get here is a taut, like high tension cable coming through the entire middle of the elevator and cutting this guy in half. But because, and the fun part of this though is they've clearly built a set for this, because it's also cutting the elevator in half. So you get this glorious thing where the elevator's been sliced in two, and you also see him be sliced in two for a couple of quick shots, and some intestines are coming out. It's actually really good. It's a fun scene.
Yeah, no, again, it's like kind of stupid and over the top, but in terms of like entertainment, it's very fun. And it's funny because you're talking before about how these are very Final Destination-y, which it's interesting because they are, in the sense that it's like it feels like there's a supernatural force that's working against them, but also in the sense where there's kind of like fake outs where it's like, okay, the thing you think's gonna kill them isn't really a thing. Like, all right, it's not the actual Raven that kills her. It's because the Raven attacks her. She's in the road and gets hit by the truck. And then it's like, yeah, it's not the actual elevator falling that kills her. It's after you fall that the cable comes and, you know, slices you in half. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And then the other big, I mean, again, there's a more sort of minute death when Mark just sort of dies of an aneurysm, right? Because Damien wants him to join him, and like, well, we'll get into all that in the plot though, because it's more plot related than it is just a straight up death.
There's a big discussion to be had with Damien, and I don't know. I feel like I didn't like that it almost feels like they're making him like a superhero character or something. It's like, oh, like he has like healing powers and like supernatural blood and. Like, oh, I don't like this.
That's fair. I don't really have any strong feelings one way or the other, but yeah, fair enough. But the last big death of the movie, well, not counting the ending, we'll save the ending for the end, but the last big death is the museum guy when the uncle Richard goes to see him in New York, because the mural, because again, this weird company owns a museum, or is at least supplying a museum with artifacts, but it also is doing all this other stuff. But the museum guy's like, hey, by this point in the movie, he's discovered the daggers and he's discovered stuff with Damien. He's kind of partly convinced. But because he's went to New York and seen the mural, he's like, hey, Richard, boss man, you have to get out here and see this. It's going to shock you to your core. And when Richard goes to New York, like, he comes to him and he's like trapped in a room with a bunch of crucifixes and a church. He's like scared, he's terrified. And this is where I'm saying, why didn't the supernatural forces kill him before he even called Richard? This is like kind of inconsistent. But the death is pretty funny though, right? It's not as like fun in a bloody way that the other two that we mentioned are, but I do think this one's quite entertaining because as Richard is getting into the cargo train car, which is where all this museum stuff is, and there's like the mural with Damien's face, which he sees and he's freaked out by it, of course. While he's in there doing that, museum guy's just standing outside at the train tracks, right? Where all these random train cars are just kind of hanging out, just sort of sitting around. And basically, supernatural force takes the gear off the brake off the train car. It's actually the one that I think Richard's in looking at the murals, and it basically rides down the track, and museum guy gets caught in the connector where the two train cars would connect together, right? That mechanism, and he gets trapped in there, and somehow it holds him tight, even though it's not like anything's like. I mean, I guess the supernatural forces might be pushing it together, but. So we get this insane couple of shots where he's like dangling in this and his legs are kicking about and he's just screaming because he can't do anything. And he's watching as he gets closer to another train car where the connectors are going to meet. So you don't see the actual like bloody impact, but you do see like a build up to like him screaming. The shots are getting quicker, and then you sort of see the train cars sort of collide. from an angle so you can't see him. But then you get a final shot of his legs dangling. I think the only thing that was missing from this was some blood dripping onto the snow, because it felt weird that there was no blood. Like if he was just crushed, right, between these two train cars in this connector, I would expect there to be some blood on the snow. Oh, yeah. You know, but you know, I thought this was fun. It wasn't. Is you know, visually, I don't know, like gory or anything like that, but it was a funny visual seeing him trapped in this connector going down the train track.
No, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think the big difference between these and the other, you know, two big ones we mentioned is that you see like what happens to the people after that. Like, you see her getting hit by the truck, you see the cable going through him, and then like you said, yeah, it's fun seeing him flailing as you know, he's getting like carried along with the train and stuff, but then you don't actually really see like the impact. Like if they would have showed, you know, like a dummy getting crushed between two cars or something, I'm sure it would have been a lot more fun. But yeah, not horrible, but yeah, definitely not as entertaining as the other two.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I like the other two more as well, I do agree, but I do think this is easily the third best in the movie.
Oh yeah.
For sure. So as far as talking about like all the plot and stuff, I feel like you just sort of tackle it in like the different like sort of like threads. So one thread would be the business stuff, one thread would be the Damien military school stuff, and then one thread would just be, I guess, well, that's the two main threads really, but like, you know, just instead of how it all wraps up at the end, and I guess the family stuff. But yeah, honestly, the school stuff's quite quick. I mean, basically it's just the kids go, Lance Henriksen is their new sergeant, is in charge of them. He meets them one-on-one. He seems stern but fair, but then quite quickly, like the next time we even see him actually after that scene, like he sees Damien kind of like stressing out the teacher in class because the teacher's mad Damien was giggling at a note, and he's like, "Hey Damien, if you're such an expert, why don't you tell me, you know, what date this thing happened with Napoleon?" And he just answers it, and he's right. So the teacher keeps asking him more historical dates, and Damien just keeps saying the years and getting it right, and it keeps going faster and faster, and it's like the teacher's really starting to get stressed out. And then Lance Henriksen kind of sticks his head in and says, "Damien, outside, I want to have a word with you." And this is where you find out Lance Henriksen is one of the people who's like there to protect him and be like, "Hey, you can't show off. One day people will know who you are and what you are, but they can't know until then. You have to like not draw attention to yourself until that day comes." And basically tells Damien, "Hey, go read this chapter in the Bible. It'll tell you who you are." So Damien does, and he basically just runs out into like the forest and goes to the lake and yells out, "No, why me?" And this was so weird because there's so many moments in the movie before this where he stares very intently, where I thought, oh, he knows he's evil, he knows he's like the Antichrist. And then you get to this bit and it's like, oh no, he didn't know at all. He's actually like horrified that this is what he is, which
also didn't seem to need much convincing.
Didn't seem to need much convincing. Literally all he
didn't even have to look at the wall.
Actually, he does do one thing. I skipped over it there. After he reads the book, he goes to the bathroom and uses a small mirror, which looks suspiciously like a smartphone, which it obviously isn't because it's 1978. But he basically uses a small mirror against the big mirror in the bathroom to see the 666 in the back of his head, which was a bit weird because I felt like in the first movie, Gregory Peck had to like really trim some hair away to get a look at that, but he's able to do it here without cutting any hair. But all right, fine, whatever. The sixties have become more pronounced with age, right? By the time he's in his 70s, he's just going to be a bald man with like 3 giant sixties all over the top of his head. I don't know, but yeah. So like, I at the very least though, as I was watching these scenes, I'm thinking, okay, this could be the start of something interesting if he doesn't want to be this and tries to resist it. But then ultimately by the end of the movie has to. But honestly, it's like maybe 2 scenes later, he's clearly just accepted what he is, and that's just who he is now.
Yeah, and it's not even like he... maybe if you're going to go that route, maybe an interesting thing would be him trying to like, okay, let me test like what I can get away with, like what my powers are. But it seems like he just instantly knows like, oh, I can do this, and it's just not interesting. Yeah,
there's the one scene earlier on, just after or before he goes in to talk to Lance Henriksen one-on-one, where there's like a bully character who gets into a fight with Mark, right, his cousin, And when Damien comes out of his little interview, he sees this happening. He basically just like stares at the bully, and it makes the bully like sort of like he gets thrown to the ground as if there's a supernatural force, and he's kind of like screaming. He's a little bit scared, and then that's it. It's like kind of all over. It's important to mention that scene though, because Mark sees this, and when afterwards he's like, "Hey, what did you do?" And he's like, "I don't know. I just looked at him." So it's important that Mark witnessed that for later on, because that's where we're going to get to next, basically. But
I mean, I know it's never like a good criticism to talk about like, oh, what the movie should have done or what should have been, but it's funny you're bringing up like Mark and stuff though, because now I'm like starting to think like, oh, maybe another interesting angle could have been if Damien was like if there's a twist where it's like, okay, maybe he's not that evil, but like maybe Mark sees this as an opportunity to be evil, and maybe like pushes him or something into doing stuff he doesn't want to, and then he's actually the bad influence. And I mean, obviously that's not what happens in the movie, so why am I talking about it? But I was like, oh, that might be more interesting.
I mean, I think the point is you're just looking for something that's more compelling between the two characters, where, to be honest, like, we've kind of already said most of the interest, like, most of the scenes that happen with Mark until there's a conflict later, we've already had them now. We've already talked about them.
Yeah.
I think, Mark's got a birthday party in the middle of the movie where him and Damien are getting along just fine. And the important part of there is that the evil guy from the company comes and speaks to Damien. He's like, "Hey, Damien, one day this company's going to belong to you." So, so he's clearly, knows what he is and is rooting for Damien and all that. But like the next time Mark's even really a factor, other than just standing there in the scenes where they're both supposed to be there because they're both at school or they're both with their parents for something, is when museum guy comes over one night after he's like found out what Damien might be, and he's found this letter that the archaeologist had written for the uncle all those years ago. And he's, Mark actually hears all this conversation because he's up in the projector booth, because they've got a house with a projector booth because they're rich.
Oh, right.
Right. And he hears this guy say, "Hey, this letter said Damien's the Antichrist and he's evil and he's going to like put us all in danger and blah, blah, blah." And Uncle Richard's like, no, I don't believe a word. This is nonsense. He's crazy. My brother was crazy. This is silly. I'm not going to listen to it. But of course, Mark saw his cousin use this power earlier. He saw something happen that could only be explained with supernatural forces of some kind. So this makes him uneasy. He's actually a little bit scared. And again, like, I could almost see, you could do something with that. This idea that he starts to be scared of his cousin and could be like the linchpin now. Like, if anything, if anyone in this movie maybe should be the main character, there's an argument to be said that Mark should be the main character. Oh, yeah. He definitely isn't, but he could be, and you could do it all from his perspective.
I mean, that would probably be more interesting then, and maybe he's the one that overhears, people talking about like the daggers and stuff that you need to kill him, and then maybe he goes to get them or whatever. Like that could be a take, Yeah,
or just just if anything though, just do more with it than wrap it up in the very next scene, because it's not the very next scene. It's not the very next scene in the movie, but the very next scene that he has with Damien is the scene where he brings up this stuff with Damien. And by the end of the scene, Damien's killed him. So there's no like story here. There's no real development where, now we can play with this idea that Mark is suspicious of Damien, that he's scared of Damien, and put them in different scenarios where that progresses and maybe it builds up to where Mark really begins to be terrified of him. Instead, the very next scene he has with them, it comes up and he's dead by the end of the scene. So there's no, there's no progression. There's no story with it. It's immediately... You've set up an interesting premise, which is, Mark's scared of his cousin and knows better than his parents do that he might be dangerous. And then you just completely resolve it and do nothing with it. He's just dead. Like, you've not created any like interesting conflicts. There's like, here's an idea. Maybe like have him like make the parents pick sides, and maybe like the parents pick Damien's side because he does sound crazy. Because it doesn't sound like a real thing. So the parents side with Damien, and you could do something with that and like show how the kids are starting to feel resentment towards each other because of this rift that's forming or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think there's a specific right answer. I'm just saying do anything with it. But like I said, the very next time you see them together, it's completely dealt with and over by the end of that scene.
Yeah, it's very strange because it feels like he is supposed to be a bigger character. Like, it seems like that they're practically like brothers, you know, that they're inseparable. But yeah, he just never feels like a presence in the movie. And then even when he dies, it's not like, you know, he dies at the very end and it's like this, you know, like the last remnants of Damien's humanity or something he has to sacrifice to become the Antichrist, you know?
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Like, if the movie was really going to be about Damien going from thinking he's good to embracing the dark side, him killing the person he in theory cares about the most, like at the end, to like signify that he's made that transition, yeah, that makes sense to me. But
yeah, it's weird because like they kill him and then it feels like there's still like a good like what 20-30 minutes like left of the movie, and then it's not even like it feels like there's like a huge fallout from, you know, the death of his character or anything. It feels like
this was the big thing for me, is that like this, I mean, it's this scene really where Mark talks to Damien about what he is, where I felt Damien had somehow completely just embraced what he was, right? But you know, compared to the scene where he was like, no, why me, earlier on, right? There wasn't that many scenes with Damien in between those two. And Damien's like, oh, I'm important, Mark, and I want you to be with me. I want you to be by my side as I rise and like ascend to the throne. And I think he even refers to like the Satan as like, you know, he was cast down unjustly from heaven, and now he will live again through me. Like, he says all these really like grandiose things, and I'm like, you've bought into this shit really quickly, Damien. And that's not interesting. What would be interesting is him like being broken down slowly to the point where he believes it and like embraces it. Like, but there's no fun in embracing it here, because he just all of a sudden he has embraced it.
Yeah, it's just a lot of the movie feels like we're just missing scenes. Like,
yes,
yeah, it just goes from him being like no to being like, okay, I'm the dark one now. Like, I'm gonna kill people and use powers and stuff. Like, I mean, it's very strange.
Mark just says, "No, I can never like be party to that." And Damien sort of like says it a couple of times, like, "No, I want you to be with me, Mark." And Mark just refuses a couple of times, and Damien's like, "Well, I guess we'll just stare at you till you have an aneurysm." And then Uncle Richard and wife come out and find him, and it's like, okay. And you would think at this point, like, maybe because he's heard the accusation from museum guy, that Uncle Richard would be like, oh, what's going on here? I mean, it does motivate him enough to go to New York to see the mural, I guess. Like, there is at least that. It does provoke that. And it's worth mentioning, at this point in the movie, I think you said like 25-30 minutes. I mean, obviously the scene in the snow with the two kids where Mark dies is a little bit before then. But I checked the time when we were at the like in New York going to the cargo train to like see the mural. There was like 10 minutes left at that point. So I think you were actually giving it too much credit. I think there's only 15 minutes left when Mark dies. Doesn't change any of the statements you made. I'm just saying. Well, the point I'm making, I guess, more than anything, is that the ending wraps things up very abruptly. Is what I'm trying to say. Okay,
yeah, maybe that's what it. Yeah, it feels like a lot happens after his death, when you'd think that that'd be more like, okay, we're right at the end.
Well,
it tries to cram a lot in.
Well, the big reveal at the end is that obviously Uncle Richard sees the mural. He's convinced that Damien's the Antichrist. He's telling his wife over the phone about it. Damien's like,
this is one convincing mural.
Yeah.
People just, it's just like, oh, that is solid proof.
Yeah, and Damien's like graduating from like I guess the movie took place over a year, even though it didn't really feel like that. There was like a wintry section, so I guess that was what that was. But
like the one of the most interesting things that like we don't really see more of is like, Damien is like rolling up in this like dance or ball or something with like a couple of girls on his arms, and it's like, oh, he's like a secret ladies man. Like, what? I'm kind of interested in like what's going on with this.
He's given an award at the graduation for being like, I don't know, student of the year, whatever it was called, and like he gets a sword given to him. It's a whole presentation, and then there's like a dance afterwards. And yeah, you're right. At the start of the scene, he just walks into frame with like a 12-year-old girl in either arm, and I'm like, wait, what? Are they impressed because of that award? Do you have this magnetism because you're the Antichrist? Like, what's going on here exactly?
Are they also like servants of the Dark Lord?
So yeah, at the end of the movie, we'll go back and talk about all the business stuff because I do think that is worth talking about, and it's actually why I feel like we've like skipped over a lot of the movie. It's because we've skipped over all the business stuff. So we'll go back and talk about that. But the end of the movie is that the Uncle Richard is wanting those daggers, right? Which the museum guy hid in a desk in the museum. So he's going there to get them, and he's picked up his wife at the airport, or she's picked him up from the airport. And so the auntie and uncle are going to this museum, and he's trying to explain to her, look, my brother was right. He's the Antichrist. I have to kill him. And yeah, and I think part of the problem with like him believing it too easily is because they've had to cram it into the last 10 minutes. Like he didn't believe it like 10 minutes ago, and now he's like, no, I need to kill him. I need these daggers. Whereas the entire first movie, like Gregory Peck had to go through so much to finally get to the point where he believed it, where he was willing to do something about it. So we rush through all that. They go to get the daggers, and the twist here, oh, pardon me, I'm hitting the mic. The twist here is that the auntie, Richard's wife, is also a servant of the Dark Lord, and she pulls out the daggers and stabs him right there and then and says, there's your daggers. I serve him. And then for some reason, Damien kills both of them, even though I felt like, I guess you inherit everything a bit sooner if you kill them now. But like this mother character that you've got here, your auntie who's looking after you, she's seems to be on Team Satan here. So like, she just killed her husband for you. Well, why are you killing her? But he makes like a fireball come through the door, and we see her like right, flailing around, burning alive. Thoughts, feelings?
I don't know. Like, I guess I was surprised at the reveal, but there's something about it to me that just feels like too convenient. Like when I see something like that, I'm trying to think of like, okay, so how long ago did she know that she had to like get with this guy because this was going to happen, that was going to lead to this, that they were going to be the foster parents of
I don't know,
the Antichrist. Like I don't know, I hate thinking of that. It just feels like everything is like too well oiled and planned, and to give them a slight bit of credit, you might have mentioned this when I had my headphones off there for a second, but they did mention she was his second wife, and that she, like the other, Mark wasn't her son, right? She married into the family after he was born. So that's true.
I guess my assumption is she went to him. I don't know. I mean, it could have been around when Damien, or not too long after Damien was born, because at that point, like this Antichrist, like Satan worshipping crowd would know which family Damien's in. So maybe that was like when they planted her. But
that's true. I guess there's like 12 years or whatever of, him being raised that we don't see. So I guess that's plenty of time.
So it's only 7 years.
Your way. 7 years? Oh, okay.
He's already 5 in the first movie.
Oh, okay, because he's about 12.
Yeah.
In this one. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's fine. But I don't know. It maybe if it was a little cooler of a death or something, then maybe I would have been a little bit more into it. But she basically just stabs Richard, and then
I think
there's just kind of a big explosion.
I have no problems conceptually with her being one of like Satan's soldiers, or whatever you want to call them. I think my issue with it boils down to a couple of things. One, I feel like we needed to spend more time with him dying so we can get more of a reaction from him that his wife betrayed him like this. And I also think that we kind of needed more of her as a character throughout the movie to make it have a bit more impact, because they just kind of tease it a little bit where she's always defending Damien with the old auntie from earlier on in the movie.
Right, yeah.
But like, she barely has a character on that. She's just kind of there. She's just the wife. She's just the mother figure. That's all she is.
I think, that's a good point. I mean, it seems like so many problems with the movie kind of stem to that. Yeah, just not getting enough time with these characters that we feel like, we're supposed to be have more relevance or whatever. Like, if you're gonna do a kind of a shocking reveal like this, it would have helped if, she felt again like more of a presence through the movie or anything. But I can't think of much of her other than that kind of opening scene where she's arguing with the other older aunt. That, other than that, I didn't really feel her much in the movie.
Yeah, she's just kind of around for a lot of other scenes, but she's not like a focus of them. Or if you're not going to flesh her out more, at the very least flesh out like how much Richard cares about her, so it's more of a hit for him.
Sure.
You know, this idea that, you know, he show that he really cares about his wife, that he maybe sticks up for her. Maybe give him a scene where they're romantic together, or where he has to stick up for her because someone belittles her or something. I don't know, anything to just like sell me on how much he really cares about his wife, so that when she turns around and stabs him, it's more of a jolt for at least that reason. Now, admittedly, I don't think that's as good as also fleshing her out so that we care about her on our own and feel betrayed as an audience. But at least if we understood him feeling betrayed by it more, or we felt that more, it would have a bit more, you know, space to it. But yeah, the door just kind of like snaps in half and a fireball comes through it and she burns alive. And the movie just ends with Damien walking like out of the building with like, oh, I guess you've inherited the Thorn billions now, or whatever it is. Like, congratulations.
All right. Now I'll go live with the president.
I'll go live with the president. So we're talking about this movie in a weird order because we had to talk about the business stuff. We had to talk about Paul and everything he's doing at the company because that's such a big part of this movie. Which actually, on that subject, it feels weird that he's not more involved in the last like 20 minutes. Like, it feels like he's such a big part of this movie. And then other than being at the dance and looking over at Damien and just sort of keeping an eye on him, he's just not there at the end. Is that not strange to you? He's just like, he's such a big part of it.
It is weird, but I don't know, that to me this stuff was like the most kind of slog of the movie for me, or at least the stuff that I was maybe the least interested in.
I mean, I get that to an extent, but conceptually it's actually the most interesting idea for me. I agree it's probably the most boring to watch, but from an idea perspective, this idea that they, like, you know, the satanic people on Earth, and part of them prepping for the rule of Damien as the Antichrist and ruling the planet, is that they're trying to corrupt this Thorn company into doing more evil things. Specifically, in this case, Paul's whole thing, he's a fairly high level executive at this point. He's young and up and coming, so he's younger than the other guys, but he's fairly high level. He's pitching this idea to buy up land around the world that's good land for farming, and he keeps saying the phrase, the future of this company isn't electronics, it isn't solar energy, it's famine. That's what he says. He says the future of this company is famine. And effectively, he tries to like paint it in a way that sounds good, where, hey, we'll control all the food so we can make sure everyone's, you know, getting a fair price. They can all be good valued customers. But obviously other executives, and maybe this is the most unrealistic part of the movie, that these rich guys are like, this seems unethical, this seems evil. So of course that's the guy that gets killed in the ice later on and whatnot. And then the scientist who's doing all the chemicals for the crops and stuff, because he's questioning things at one point, because he goes like flying around the world. You don't even see this. We just hear that he's went to another country to look out some land, to pick out land for this project. And when he comes back, we find out that 3 of the people that they wanted to buy land from for the company said no. And he accepted that because that's their right. It's their land. But it turns out all 3 of these people who said no were mysteriously killed within a few days of saying no.
Whoa.
So he's got questions. So then that's why he's killed with the chemicals at the plant. So it's like, okay. And the entire time, Paul's just the one concocting all this. He's the one with the pitch. He's the one covering it up. He's, you know, we see him talk to Damien once or twice to like say, hey, I've got your back. You'll be in charge of all this someday. And, you know, I'm prepping all the evil things we could do as a company. Like, I do like the idea on a pure conceptual level of that part of what the Antichrist would do on Earth is basically just be the worst possible version of a Trump, be the worst possible version of a Musk, and like do horrible, or like Nestle trying to like they tried to do something with water where like water shouldn't be free. Like, we want the rights to water supplies or some shit, whatever they were doing. Like that kind of evil shit. That's interesting to me.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree 100%. Like there's an idea there. I don't think, and again, it's probably because the movie is so scattershot between the things that's jumping back and forth between. But yeah, there's an interesting idea where it's like, okay, you know, you have this kind of ancient satanic evil, but then, you know, mix it with like, what is the modern day evil? And it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, capitalism, like these big companies that are controlling the world. And yeah, like if you think about like the kind of people that are probably like the most evil, that are doing the most damage, and it's probably not even like the people you think of there, like you mentioned, like, you know, Trump and Musk and stuff, but like, you know, they're so buffoonish and out, like, you know, spoken and everything, but like the truly evil people are probably the people you never hear about, that are these like,
it's the Paul, you know, it's the Paul behind these people who's like saying, here's the things we should do for our best interests.
Yeah, and it's always probably like some unassuming company that you never heard of, that's like, you know, oh, Globochem or something, that's like, oh, but they secretly run like all of the world's food manufacturing or whatever, or they have like a stranglehold on this one essential thing that we need to live. Like, there's a lot of interesting things you can do with that.
You know, Tim, I'm very disappointed you didn't say Umbrella Corporation, but I'll let it go.
Of course.
And we can move on with our lives.
Yeah.
No, I think there's something interesting there, and there's nothing wrong with a movie juggling like an A plot, a B plot, and even a C plot.
Oh,
like, some movies do it very well, but this movie just feels like every time, like, you get a couple of scenes of the business stuff, and then it'll go to some military school stuff, it'll go to some family stuff, it'll go to, you know, the entire reporter thing, you know, where she ends up getting killed by the truck and the crow. Like, that almost feels like a mini movie, like, because she's mentioned before then, but she's introduced. We get a second scene with her with someone else, and then we get the scene where she sees Damien, and then the scene with her death. They're basically back to back. There might be like a small interstitial, but it's almost like, oh, they started and ended their whole thing in a very quick span of time. So it didn't feel like a big character got killed. If it's someone who had been like popping up and trying to like convince them that something was going on, and then she was killed like after like some time, it might have had a bit more impact, perhaps, rather than, you know, it's that classic thing in a horror movie where a character's introduced just so they can be killed a couple of scenes later. Same with the Doctor. He's introduced, and then like 2 scenes later, here's his death scene. Some of the deaths don't feel like big enough deals, whereas I'd argue in the first movie, obviously the nanny at the start's quite quick because it's near the start of the movie, but all of the other deaths, it's like, no, the characters are kind of like, you know, the priest shows up, and it's not until after he's given too much information to Gregory Peck where he's killed. The photographer's there throughout a lot of the movie. By the time he eventually goes, the wife is there, obviously as a prominent character throughout most of the movie before she goes. Like, everyone feels like an important character who dies, except the one who dies first, but that's okay because they're the shocking, inciting incident that gets us going on the story. Whereas here, almost every character who dies is actually someone who's introduced fairly quickly before they die, just so we can have a quick death. Not all of them, but most of them. And maybe that's another critique to like add to the list now that I'm thinking about it. So
I feel like you could have done more like stuff with like people at the school or something. Like there could have been some comeuppance for like the bully or the teacher or something. Like if you would just want to have a movie with bodies and fun deaths, like could have done something.
Yeah, I feel like you want, maybe you want 2 plots. You want the company stuff to show how those like people in positions of power already try to set the stage for him, and you want the story of coming of age at the school. But I feel like, that should have been an actual subplot, but it isn't a subplot. It's like, you know, like, I was expecting, we're going to see, like, who he befriends, maybe there's a girl he likes. Like, I could have seen, like, a whole, like, you know, storyline at the school, and it feels like, you get that one scene where he kind of, like, belittles the teacher, and then he's told what he is, and then next time you see him at the school, he's graduating. Like, there's no build, there's no story there, really. It just, that's it. So, and everything in the movie kind of feels like that.
Yeah, it's just a lot of feels like there's just stuff that we're missing, this context that we're not getting. And
when we say there's missing scenes, we're not saying the movie should be that much longer. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it should, the script should be better at making those 100 minutes count, making it feel like everything's like contributing and telling a story.
And it probably sounds like maybe we're being like pretty negative. Like I think there's a lot of criticisms, but I don't hate the movie. Like it's not like the worst thing in the world. It's not a hard watch.
I mean, I think I'm critiquing quite heavily here because one, it's easy to compare it to the first movie and say like where it's went wrong. But for the record, I think enough of the deaths in this movie are fun. I still kind of recommend it as like a you know, it's a kind of a bad sequel, but it's got enough fun deaths that I like watching it again, having seen it a few years ago, and I think I saw it once a long time ago, but I'd completely forgotten that initial viewing. Is that it's still like it's a bit dull in spots. You can kind of get away with like not paying attention and doing stuff like in between segments, but there's enough fun kills and the odd little moment of humor, intentional or otherwise, that I don't think this is a torturous sequel to watch. It's definitely much worse in the first one, but it's like, as far as like sequels that are torture to watch goes, this doesn't even scratch the the proper deep end. It doesn't get there at all. There's much worse.
Yeah, like I mean, again, I think it's a little interesting to compare it to, like The Exorcist, because that's another like, huge 70s religious horror movie, and the sequel to that movie, while some interesting ideas it has, I do find it like almost unwatchable. Like
somehow the Exorcist 2 movie is crazier in ideas than this one, but is more boring than this one, and that is wild. It's a wild achievement that they pulled off with The Heretic. Yeah. Oh, that's in fact, The Heretic, Exorcist 2, that also does the name thing.
That's right. That's so weird.
Damn 70s. God damn it. Why do we just have a sequel title? Yeah. So this came quite quick. This is only 2 years after the original, so they fast tracked this bad boy after the first one was a success. So, yeah, which I guess means that the kid playing Damien in the first one couldn't play him in this because, well, no, we're aging you up, so you've not aged enough yet. So tough luck. Yeah, it's not a good movie, but I would say it's a lot more kind of in the middle rather than just terrible. At least because there's some fun deaths. It's nice seeing Lance Henriksen. There's a couple other faces that are, there's decent people in it. It's just they're not given the material to actually, be anything. Now, whether or not scenes were deleted or the script just wasn't very good at actually telling the story in a good, consistent manner that felt like it had good pacing and structure, I don't know, but it's definitely lacking in the movie for sure. So
yeah.
All right, I guess we're on to the final segments here. So what was your scene of the movie? Which I guess is basically saying, did you prefer the elevator scene or the truck death scene?
I'll let you go first because I don't want to steal yours.
I'm conflicted. I think the truck death scene is funnier, but the elevator scene is actually more impressive. From they actually built a set and did all this work to make this happen. So I'm going to go with the one that's more genuinely kind of good, and I'll say the elevator scene, but it's close for very different reasons.
All right, well, it's funny because I was actually thinking the truck anyway, which I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, the elevator is a better like actual scene, but the truck one is just so over the top, and it makes me laugh, and I always like when animals attack people, so I like the crow raven getting its shots in. But yeah, that'd probably be mine. All
right, MVP of the movie, Tim?
I mean, it is a little tough. Because it's not like the first one where you had just top-notch performers. Not to put anyone down. I don't think many people in this were terrible. I mean, I do like Lance Henriksen quite a bit, but he didn't really have that much to do.
I feel like that might end up with my cop-out answers. That I just like Lance Henriksen, so Lance Henriksen gets picked.
Yeah. It is tempting to do that, but I don't want to go that far. Jeez, but who would I go with then? I'm sorry, but I don't think the person that played Damien was super strong.
Nah, especially since he is I want you to join me, Mark. I'm evil, Mark.
Yeah.
I want you to join me in my reign of terror across the world. He's
oh my god. Legacy sequel Omen starring Tommy Wiseau.
Whatever. Was that what that sounded like? Jeez, I was trying to do an English accent because he's doing this very proper mummy kind of accent. Whatever accent he developed in that first 5 years when he lived in London, certainly stuck because he still got it.
Geez. I guess I can't really give it to the Raven either, although that would also be tempting to do. Maybe I'll give it to the scientist guy in the elevator.
Oh, okay, the Doctor.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. A little bit of like a cheesy character being like, with the, I've seen this blood before. That's not what he sounds like at all, but that was like the essence of the character, and yeah, he was fun and got a fun death. So
I just love that you had a book that presumably had an entire alphabet of animals, like in what their blood or whatever looks like. Yeah. Or DNA or whatever the signifier is that's telling them what type of animal it is. I'm sorry, I'm playing with the cats. I've got measuring tape here, and I'm kind of wiggling it around, okay. And Firefly's very into it. Yeah. See, here's the thing. Lance Henriksen was in Aliens and the Terminator. Okay, so it's very hard for me not to just pick Lance Henriksen based on the fact that he's Lance Henriksen.
He's a presence for sure.
But I think that's more of a damnation, if you will,
okay,
of the other like characters, and that none of them like achieve like enough to be MVP on their own. Like it shouldn't be Lance Henriksen. There's no way it should be. Like, his part's too small. But it's just nice to see him, and everyone else doesn't really rise above. They all have problems, The uncle isn't as compelling or has enough character compared to Gregory Peck. The wife could be interesting because she turns out to be a villain, but they don't really spend enough time with her. Mark, I think if they actually gave him enough plot and his like reaction to realizing what Damien is, he could have been a cool story, and that could have been like MVP worthy, but they don't do enough with that either. And the actor playing Damien's kind of shit. So Lance Henriksen is my choice.
That's fair.
That's what we're going with. All right, Tim, rate the Omen 2. Damien, aka Damien, the Omen 2.
Yeah, I think again, this isn't a movie I think is particularly good, but I don't think it's particularly bad. So I'm kind of like right down the middle. So I feel like, yeah, like I'm starting at a 5, and then I'll give it half a point for the truck scene and the elevator scene. So I'll give it a 6, which I think is
okay. Interesting.
It's okay. It's like I think without those couple of like really fun kills, it would be more just like a straight 5, just very down the middle. Like, all right, not bad, whatever. But those scenes were both really fun, and overall the movie is not like it's not like overly bad or doing anything that's really like annoying me or making me mad, but there's also like not enough good stuff to really put it over the top. So yeah, I'll go for 6.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I was thinking 5.5. I was surprised you gave a half point for both scenes individually, because I was going to say, yeah, it's kind of straight down the middle. It doesn't capitalize on the things that it could be doing, but it's not as bad as certainly some sequels can be, or some of the bad stuff we do watch on here. It was still an easy enough watch. So I'll go at 5.5, and that half point is because, yeah, those death scenes are so fun, and I'll also throw the train one in there as well. That, yeah, so there you go.
I was thinking 5.5 as well, and then I made an executive decision, like, you know what, I'll just give it a low bump.
Sure. All right, well, there you go. That's an average of 5.75 for Omen 2. We'll see if Sam Neill can raise the next one to new interesting heights. Yeah, that's pretty much us then. I'll just tell you what you can get on Patreon and YouTube membership by supporting us. You can get an exclusive episode every month. We often do kind of silly bad movies there. Not always. Sometimes we'll maybe branch into other things, but we'll do a lot of silly 80s movies and things like that on there. We've got 50 plus, I think, around now of those episodes. We do one per month, although for the Octoberthon there's 3, so that's fun. Get some extra stuff for October. Plus at the $5 and up tier, you get even more streams, which is once or twice a month we'll do an extra sort of segment where instead of reviewing a movie, we'll sit down and sort of decide a top 10, or we'll have like sort of a discussion about a horror topic, or maybe, you know, anything. It could be pretty much anything we want. It'll always be horror related, but it'll be kind of just a standalone discussion of some kind. But yeah, that is what you can get and support the show and keep all the content coming. Hopefully you're enjoying the Octoberthon and all the extra episodes, and you're excited for Omen 3 and 4 and Remake and First Omen. So there you go. Actually, they showed a lot of restraint not bringing up that First Omen's the 6th one, because like you think a marketing person would be like, oh, we can do something with that. 666, baby.
Yeah. I'm very surprised it wasn't called that.
Yeah. Yeah, especially since the remake, which was the one that came out last before that. Do you remember the release date for that movie, Tim?
Yeah, it was like, was it 6/6/2006? Or...
Yeah, 6th of June 2006. Yeah. So
probably the best thing about that movie.
I mean, you can tell it got greenlit purely because they could release it on that day. They realized they could do it, and they went, "We're having that." So, yeah. But anyway, look forward to all that stuff coming up. Hopefully, like I said, you're enjoying the Octoberthon. You know, let us know what horror movies you've been watching in the comments. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff helps out a bunch as well, of course. You know, any support of any kind, money or otherwise, is all very much greatly appreciated. So thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.